What's up? What it do? Welcome back to the DC Blacks channel. It's no secret on the internet and in certain hip hop culture circles. Uh, the big Meech, as I call him, Demetrius. Let's say the BMF issue, Tammy, Cuffy, is a humongous issue. But I see a lot of guys, let's say a lot of YouTubers, a lot of bloggers, they are reiterating certain things that's just been said over and over and over and over again, but not digging. And I believe that once I got aware of Terry Bernard White and people got to speaking about him, especially a lot of my Atlanta family, I felt like I had to go check out Terry White. So I went to check out Terry White, and inside the Terry White research, case files, and all that right there, you begin to develop a different picture. Now, I'm about to just say some stuff off the top of my head, so please don't think that I'm being redundant as I read my notes, but think about this, y'all. According to the Terry White case, Tammy knew Demetrius Flannery before she met Terry White. Keep that in mind as I go through these notes. Jack Harvey investigated Demetrius Flannery and Terry Bernard White. Now, I don't know what role Tammy could have played in the investigation of Demetrius Flannery, because evidently before she turned on him, she was very, let's say, friendly towards him. But one thing is for sure from reading the paperwork is that even after she turns on you like a black widow, because she turned on Terry, according to the paperwork, for him, let's say, messing with another woman. But nevertheless, she still was allegedly having sexual relationships with him based on the discovery. But let's just get into the facts. Jack Harvey investigated Demetrius Flannery. Jack Harvey investigated Terry Bernard White. Terry Bernard White had a heroin conviction when he was very young, like 2021. Then he had a cocaine conviction in 1993. He began to cooperate. He began to cooperate from prison. He learned how to negotiate cooperations. And I don't know if I wrote this down, so I may say this again, but in my head, I believe that Tammy Cowens learned some things from Terry White in the process of cooperating, or whoever it is that introduced her to Jack Harvey. Now, I don't know who introduced her to Jack Harvey, but in my journalism, I want to get to it. So let's just jump into the story. This story right here, for anybody who's following the Demetrius, Big Meech, all the whole stuff that's going on with him, shout out to Cuffy, shout out to St. Louis. You must understand who Terry White is if you don't know who Terry White is. So just to give you a quick rundown, I'm not going to be long with this one. Terry White, cold-blooded rat. Let's get that straight. But I believe he accepts him being a rat. So I'm not going to take this opportunity to say rat, 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 rat. He accepted it is what it is. And if you read his paperwork, he challenges it. As of 11/5/09, Terry was convicted of 2 felonies. One was a heroin joint where he got probation and sentenced by a judge, Schoob, Shoob. I don't know how to pronounce that, to probation. Terry was about 20 or 21 years old at the time. You can cross-reference this, you can fact-check it. His second conviction, as I just said, was for cocaine distribution in 1993. Terry cooperated in the 1993 case. So let's make that clear. I kept hearing people say Terry's a rat, Terry's a rat. I wasn't on that because I couldn't see it, but according to the court documents, he did cooperate in 1993. Terry cooperated on that case, and he stated on the stand that he knows the ropes about cooperation. Now, I have a note right here to tell you that I could just read it straight from the book. So let's check that out real quick. So Terry White says that he cooperated in 1993, and he stated on the stand that he knows the ropes. And if we go back to page 160, and I'm going to drop this in here when I do it, you will see exactly. I'm going to read it verbatim, okay? Now, the one thing that I want you to pay attention is this is coming from Terry's case, and this document was filed 11/05/2009. It's on page 160 of the 181-page document. This is the cross-examination of Terry White in 2009. Mr. White, how many felonies have you been convicted of? Mr. White answers 2. One of them was for heroin possession, correct? You were sentenced by Judge Shoob to probation, correct? Terry says, yes, that's correct. That was when you were how old? 20, 21? He said, I think that's correct. Now, the next question. And the second conviction you have is for cocaine distribution, correct? Terry answers, that's correct. And when were you convicted of cocaine distribution? Terry answers, in 1993. And the next question is, and did you cooperate in that case? Terry's answer is, I did. So you know the ropes about cooperating, don't you? Terry's answer is, that's exactly what I'm saying. Bro, you know how much balls it takes to sit on a stand in an open courtroom and a prosecutor, or I don't know if this was the prosecutor or not, but a lawyer asks you that you know the ropes about cooperating, and your answer is so smug that that's exactly what I'm saying. Nevertheless, let's move on. The next question was, so when you are toying with Agent Prater, you want to set the conditions under which you cooperate. Take the handcuffs off. That's right, correct? Terry answers, man, that's correct. And did you decide and when? Hold on. Terry answers, that's correct. Next question is to Terry. And when did you decide to cooperate? He said, did I decide? He said, yes. When did you decide? Well, yes, I just decided. Next question. And you decided when you would cooperate and who you would target? Now, this is just a question. I thought he was going to get some the deep answer because some cooperators can decide who their targets are, which I believe Tammy was able to decide who her target was. I believe she was going to pick Suarez, and I believe that was the lick with Meech. But I believe the Agent Cromer locked in on Meech, and St. Louis locked in on Cuffy, and it took the power of decision-making of who the target was out of the rat's hands. It says you did decide to cooperate, correct? Terry says, well, I had proffered with my attorney, Sheila Tyler, and she told me what to do. I told y'all some of these attorneys tell these people how to do this stuff. And the next question is, all right, and while you were in prison, you cooperated, correct? This is Terry White. Terry White's answer is, yes, sir. You cooperated with the BOP officials? No, I didn't. You didn't? What do you mean cooperate then? Did you help them in internal investigations? No, I didn't. Next question. I think it was involving an air compressor, as a matter of fact. Answer, an air compressor? Yeah, just stolen property. Now, we don't got to keep going into the rest of the transcript because I posted it. You can read it all if you want to. But I'm just showing you that to show you that Terry White cooperated at that time. He was affiliated with Tammy Cowens at that time. Jack Harvey was the one investigating him at that time. And let's move on to the next point that I want to make to y'all. Terry was cooperating in prison as at least from 1993 and up. In some of my other videos, my older videos, I explained a theory that came to my head, which is whatever point in time Meech got to Atlanta and whoever he was dealing with in the streets, at some point in time he had to know who Terry was, just like Terry knew who he was. And I'm talking about long before the Terry and Tammy drove to go see Meech somewhere, whether Terry seen him or not, and she recorded the whole conversation on the phone. It is even very possible that Terry educated Tammy on how to cooperate or third-party cooperate. Keep in mind, they was riding around doing all this, and they was still at least cordial after Terry was in prison. There are records of her sending him money. Now let's move on to the next part. Meech's name comes up in the paperwork on page 169 of document 64. So Meech's name comes up on page 169 of document 64, filed on November 5th, 2009. The judge even says, I'm not sure who Meech is or what he has to do with this case, after they asked Terry White about Demetrius Flannery in open court. I believe Terry is lying when Terry says he doesn't know who Meech is, because when you get down into the motions file between Terry and his legal team, they filed motions with the name Demetrius Flannery in it all the way back in 2009, which is his third case, okay? So as I said, on the stand, Terry says he does not know Demetrius, but let's not forget that Terry and Tammy drove to see Meech when Tammy recorded Terry talking about criminal activity. I already said that. I'm just going to say that again so you don't lose the fact of that. But they asked him on page 169. Page 169, line 2. It says, okay, you know who Meech is? Come on, y'all. We all know who Meech is. They asked him in open court, do you know who Meech is? He says Meech. The person says, yes, Meech. Objections come in and they want to take Meech's name out of this. Every time Meech's names come up in some of these hearings before the time in which we're talking about, the prosecutor or some type of federal agent does something to make sure that they try to limit his name being mentioned in the paperwork, okay? Now, let's go to this other point I want to make to you. So, Terry knew Tammy was a CI, right? In his paperwork from the very beginning, when you get a case in federal court or in any court and you're proceeding to trial, at some point in time, you get what's called a discovery. A discovery is all the information that they have against you that they're going to use against you. If you've been following any of the things that's been going on with Dion Gatlin, which is Cuffy, Tammy, Meech, and this dude Terry White, and the DEA affidavits being filed, constantly you will hear the word disclosure, disclosure, disclosure. Without the proper disclosure and the proper due process, all cases fall apart. When I'm saying that he got his discovery, Terry knew that Demetrius' name was in some of his discovery because most of the recordings that are used against Terry White in his cases weren't done by wiretap surveillance. They were done by sitting around Tammy talking while she was recording his phone call. So when Terry got his discovery and he filed suppression motions to suppress certain conversations he had, Special Agent Jack Harvey and some of his affidavits didn't put all the information in the affidavits, didn't put all the recording calls in. Demetrius Flannery's name came up several times in some of the calls and they didn't do it. I truly believe that through the experiences and the knowledge that Tammy Cohen gathered or gained during the Terry White investigation, she knew and had learned how to sabotage the affidavits that contain Big Meech's name, as she say, because I call him Demetrius, during the Cuffy case. Terry White knew that Tammy was a confidential informant in his case as early as August 25th, 2009. At that time, Tammy had been a steady girlfriend of Terry White. Even after getting another girlfriend, a woman by the name of Miss Linton, he continued to have sexual relationships with Tammy, who was the confidential source in his case at the time and who was recording his every word and every memory or self-declaration of drug trafficking while they were around. Tammy was recording Terry's calls using, and I'm quoting this, using sexual relationships as a device to do it. In layman terms, that means that she was still having sex with him to set him up and get him busted by Jack Harvey and the DEA in Atlanta. This DEA, they should do like how they do Housewives of Atlanta. They should do a series just called DEA of Atlanta. Everything that intrigues you in a Hollywood film would be in DEA Atlanta. They should have DEA Atlanta and they should change the BMF title to IMF. DEA Atlanta with Informant Mafia Family featuring Big Screech. I do want to get this part in. Now, we already said that Tammy was recording the calls, but I will bet all of y'all, anybody that researched this case, I will bet you my last dollar, right? I will bet you my last dollar that Tammy has recorded calls between herself and Demetrius Flannery. Why am I so certain? Because the whole case against Terry White was based on recorded calls. Tammy is a call recorder. She records, hoards, and documents evidence and information. If you read the pages of the 271-page document from the Franks Hearn in Dion Cuffy Gatlin's case, she mentions that she has stacks of paper. She don't even know what some of them are. We're going to get on to the next part. But I bet you, and we'll see, I bet you she got recorded phone calls between herself and Demetrius Flannery. From 2008 June to 2009, Tammy worked on Terry White's case, reporting to Jack Harvey exclusively. She may have reported to somebody else, but she always went to Jack Harvey. Never forget, Jack Harvey investigated and took down Terry White. Jack Harvey investigated and took down Demetrius Flannery. I don't understand how Tammy could be good friends with this person. So much so that even after he retired, he was still some sort of informant mentor to her. There was missing recordings and information that Terry White claimed should have been in the affidavit for his case. According to Terry White, there was missing recordings and information that Terry White claims should have been in the affidavit for his case. All right. Now, what I mean by that is that there are allegations that Tammy Corn was involved in illegal activity as well. Jack Harvey, when he was writing up his affidavits for search warrants and all these different things, he somehow forgot that Tammy was involved in certain things. Let me just say it like that. I don't want to read too much between the lines. Nevertheless, Terry insists that Tammy's relationship with Meech should have been disclosed. What does that mean? Terry and his legal team is saying that, in the process of investigating who was the CI against me and the information that they have against me, illegal or not, it comes from her. In his discovery, him and his defense team are alleging that Tammy's relationship with Demetrius Flannery should have been disclosed. Why? I'm going to let y'all think about that. She was working with Jack Harvey. Harvey was the investigating officer, the investigating DEA agent, let me say that correctly, for Terry as well as Demetrius. So we now know that at some point, Terry is aware of Meech. Although in this same hearing that I'm talking about, that I'm reading from, he told the people in open court he didn't know him, but in the paperwork that he filed, challenging his affidavits, challenging certain statements that he made while he was being recorded by Tammy, he challenging those things that it was never disclosed that Tammy had a close relationship with Demetrius Flannery. It's also written in there in the paperwork that she has strong ties to the national leader of the Black Mafia family. This is in his disclosures. And I mean, this is in Terry's motions to suppress that these disclosures should have been there. So once again, I'm going to say it one more time. Terry believes that Tammy's relationship with Demetrius Flannery should have been disclosed in his case long before all this other stuff happened with Dion Gallon. Let's keep it moving. I'm going to put a thought in here real quick, right? Just side thought. I truly believe that Meech and Tammy was going to set up Terry. And I don't know why nobody got a benefit or reward for that. But I truly believe that while Tammy and Meech was conspiring to do whatever they was going to do, that this Terry White thing was probably part of the first whole hookup. But let's keep it moving. Let's not forget, all this info was on Pacer in 2009. Pacer is an online site where you can look up court filings. Most of the time people speak about federal court filings, but you can look up federal court filings, appeal court filings, and some state filings in there. I only look up federal cases on Pacer. But before a lot of people became aware of Pacer, Tammy was aware of it, and Tammy was watching the cases develop through Pacer. So, as I said, let's not forget all of this information was available on Pacer in 2009 and 2010. You understand? My point for saying that is this. When I talk in private, I talk to my buddies, or sometimes when I'm talking on like live and I'm talking to people from different states that know about this case, I always say that none of this was a secret. To street guys, legal heads, lawyers, law enforcement, in 2009 and 2010, they were all aware of this matter. They were all aware of this matter. I'm getting to the point that I can't believe that Demetrius and nobody else knew that Tammy was the star witness against Terry White. What am I getting at? They was dealing with Terry White. He's a cooperator. We call them rats in the streets. People was dealing with Tammy. She's bigger than a rat. She's a paid government informant, and she's been doing that in the streets. So I ain't got to beat a dead horse with that. There is too many questions to be answered about why the Black Mafia family and its participants are constantly engaged, involved, and in bed with informants. Now, going back to Terry White identifies Demetrius Flannery in his paperwork through his defense team, as I already mentioned to you, right? So he had to be lying when in open court he said he didn't know who Meech was. It's all through his paperwork. Between him and his defense team, they're constantly throwing Demetrius' name in there, asking why is Demetrius' name in the phone calls, which I got to say this again. I believe Tammy Combs, whenever she do whatever she's doing with 50 Cent, is going to have some recorded phone calls between herself and Demetrius. On page 5 of document 44, okay? All right. Now, on page 5 of document 44 in the Terry White case, but on page 5 of document 44, filed on August 25th, 2009, it's only 11 pages, but on page 5 of that document, I'm going to just read this straight out. It says, moreover, Miss Coleman, which is Tammy, had and continues to have strong ties to former BMF leader Demetrius Meech Flannery. She was involved with Meech in some manner prior to her relationship with Mr. White. Mr. Harvey was actively involved in the investigation of Mr. Flannery, and it is inconceivable that if Miss Cohen had not told Jack Harvey about Meech, he did not already know of the relationship. What does that mean? It means that even if she didn't tell Jack Harvey that her and Demetrius Flannery had something going on, that Jack Harvey had to already know. This is an extremely important factor as it puts into context the recorded conversations referenced in the affidavit about Demetrius Flannery. Real quick, I told you that Terry White, when they got the discovery, their legal team did an extensive investigation on these recorded phone calls. And some of these recorded phone calls, right, that referenced Demetrius Flannery were taken out of the affidavit and taken out of the evidence. Why? If it wasn't taken out of the affidavit and it wasn't taken out of the evidence, then maybe we would already known that Tammy and Big Meech was up to some secret squirrel government informant mafia family business. Now, we're going to go on for that because I'm really not trying to be funny, but I do believe that there's proof that Demetrius's name came up in recorded conversations spoken about in that affidavit in the Terry White case because they would have never filed suppression motions, and I'm going to show you the proof of it. The court documents of Terry White allege that Tammy was involved with Demetrius before she was dealing with Terry White. I'm reading that verbatim, although I said it already. Jack Harvey is the master chess player of this all because some type of way he found a way to not get blamed for anything corrupt. And think about it, even when it all hit the fans, who did DA Atlanta put everything on? Agent Keith Cromer, because Tammy did what? I'm not going to say she told on him, but that's the word she used on the stand. She said, yo, I had already told on him, but she never crossed Jack Harvey. Her and Jack Harvey are still close friends today. Jack Harvey took down Terry White. Jack Harvey took down BMF. Now, another thing that's very interesting that Terry points out in his paperwork, right, that Jack Harvey's affidavit concerning Tammy failed to disclose that she was engaged in any criminal activity. Now, from this point all the way down to Cuffy facing a death penalty, lawyers for the government and lawyers that represent Tammy keep saying that she's an innocent person. She has no culpability of crime and all this other stuff. That's not what I'm getting from the streets. And that's not what I'm getting from this paperwork. And in Terry White paperwork, they allege that she began to work for the government, specifically the DEA, to clear her name or to make sure that when they came down on Terry White, she wouldn't be culpable. She wouldn't go to jail. Now, dudes from the street say she constantly has friendships and associations with stand-up drug dudes. Why? I don't know, but that's something that you got to think about. Now, I'm gonna speed up a little bit and I'm gonna jump into March 4th of 2015, right? Because I know that a lot of times when we talking about this Frank's motion and the evidentiary hearing, they come from the Frank's motion where Tammy says conflicting things, all right? Most of that paperwork come from the year 2016, 2017. So what I did when I did this research, I went back to 2015 before Tammy was under any pressure. I just want you to hear this, although it's been said before, but I want you to remember what she said before Meech's name got caught up in it. I truly believe she recanted everything when Meech's name got caught up in it. I believe that Meech told her she better fix it. That's why if you listen to Tamara's video, her interview, which is Cuffy's daughter, Tamara says, and she alleges that when Cuffy discovered or even came to the suspicion that Meech could have had something to do with it, I don't know if she said he talked to him, but I know that the information that was relayed between the two parties was Meech said, don't worry about Tammy. She not going to do nothing. She not going to do this. She not going to do this. She going to fix it. I believe that's when she called the prosecutors. No, she called the St. Louis agents. They didn't return the call. She called the judge. He sent her to the clerk. The clerk addressed her told her to address her issues to the U.S. Attorney's office. And when she got fed up, what did she do? She sent information to the defense saying, yo, everything in the thing is a lie. She blamed it on Cromer. She even came back and put into question everything that was said about Demetrius sending Cuffy to her, sending Suarez to her. So in the end, I believe that she was trying to destroy the case to do what? To protect Demetrius Flannery's image. Number two, that's another reason why I think she's so mad now with him. But number two, I also believe that the reason there's a whole bunch of statements of her in the same sentence saying Demetrius didn't do it and the Black Mafia family didn't do it is because she knew that she couldn't sabotage Demetrius or the Black Mafia family or the term BMF, because this is what she was banking on to be able to win her golden goose egg, which is not just Demetrius himself, but the life rights and everything that came about it. But nevertheless, I just want to read this line to you from 2015. CS1, which is Tammy. This is coming straight out of the books too. CS1 told investigators that she had been contacted by Demetrius Flannery in order to introduce Fidel Suarez to Gatlin so that Suarez could begin delivering cocaine to Gatlin. This comes from August 28th, 2012 affidavit, which is the first affidavit and the only It's the first affidavit and it's the only official affidavit. Her affidavit that she tried to write and correct things after Demetrius' name got blown up in it. Technically, it's part of evidence, but it's not an official affidavit. It's just what she's saying. DA don't back it, and the courts don't back it. I got to read this one part off the footnote. So this comes from document 122, filed on March 4th, 2015, page 11 of the 19, okay? I'm just going to read the bottom of the footnote for y'all so you could see what type of information was in the paperwork when it came out at first, all right? It says, Defendant Gatlin argues there is no significance to the truck and that the information was not corroborated. To the contrary, in 2005, Suarez was stopped with $57,000 in cash in a truck and was later charged with conspiracy to distribute cocaine as a result of the seizure. Additionally, a truck owned by Suarez was stopped on 2 different occasions in 2009 with 2 different drivers. On each occasion, narcotics was located inside the truck. August 28, 2012, affidavit states this. A reasonable and logical conclusion based upon all the information available to the district court at the time the court reviewed the affidavit was that the truck contained narcotics. Additionally, the only reason that CS1 was in contact with Suarez at all was to introduce Suarez to Gatlin in order to facilitate the delivery of the narcotics to Gatlin on behalf of Demetrius Flannery. This is on page 11 of document 122, filed March 4th, 2015, before Tammy changed the story, before she created a whole nother affidavit, before she did any of this. So what's my point? My point is that if you go study the Terry White case, he was already a cooperating informant. Tammy was already dealing with him, had sexual relationships with him. She was dealing with Demetrius before Terry White, which makes me wonder, did they come up with a play to get Terry White too? And then after she was dealing with Terry White, she was still dealing with Demetrius, and Terry White went to jail, and everybody knew that Tammy is the one, according to Jack Harvey, Special Agent Jack Harvey, he said she was 95% responsible for his takedown. She even identified who she believed was his connect. And I'm going to read it to you verbatim before I go. This comes out of document 80, filed on May 3rd, 2010, all right? And I'm just going to read this one part. The affidavit established that Tammy, although they have her as CI at this point in time, confidential informant, not confidential source, because this is another document, that Tammy had no criminal record. Affidavit P25, the information provided by Tammy concerned the defendant and his drug associates. His drug dealing included parcel service shipments. We're talking about Terry White now, Terry Bernard White, who's been a cooperating government informant since at least 1993. The information provided by Tammy concerned the defendant and his drug associates. His drug dealing included parcel service shipments, which means he was getting it through the mail, according to them. His money and financial dealings included a private banker, his use of code words, which is, that's code talk. She broke that down. The use of business front and filings of income taxes to establish his cover as a legitimate businessman. Much of the information provided by Tammy was independently corroborated by the affiant through records and by the defendant himself during recorded telephone calls, which Tammy recorded. For example, the information that the informant gave on the defendant was about the defendant's supplier and members of the Sinaloa cartel, and the name was Jaeger. So they said that the connect that he had was connected to the Sinaloa cartel, name was Jaeger. Now, upper level, big time narcotic traffickers say that true cartel members don't deal with African Americans. Nevertheless, she alleged that this person's name was Jaeger, all right? And this comes out of the affidavit on page 10. And this was repeated by the defense in a telephone, this was repeated by the defendant in a telephone call recorded on April 21st, 2009. The defendant, which is Terry White, the defendant's use of the Terry White group, she created who the Terry White group is and connected it to the Sinaloa cartel through a person by the name of Jaeger. The Terry White group was verified by the affiant, and it is doubtfully business viability, right? The defendant's use of the Terry White group was verified by the affiant, which is Jack Harvey, and is doubtfully business viability explained by an analysis of bank records and the tax returns of the defendant. But Tammy been working, Terry White a rat, Meech knew Terry White knew Meech, and they was all in cahoots. Told you, Black Mafia family is IMF, Informant Mafia family. Subscribe to the channel.